Back, this is Civil Discourse Now. He's Paul Ogden.
He's Mark Small, and this is Jeff Cox.
Jeff, what's your contact information?
jrcoxlawllc.com is my law firm. No boxes allowed with dashes in between. .blogspot.com is the blog. And we've got the book coming out next year on the Battle of the Java Sea of World War II. It's called Rising Sun, Falling Skies.
So with dashes in between, is that part of the blog address?
Yes.
Okay. This segment, we were talking last segment about the so-called debate. It's not a real debate because they don't actually...
And I do want to talk about the format, some of the gubernatorial debate.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the debate, so-called debate between
which I think was
candidates
worse.
for governor of Indiana. Mike Pence is a U.S. representative from whatever numbered district. John Gregg,
the Muncie area.
okay, John Gregg, because they switch the numbers all the time.
Mm-hmm.
John Gregg, who's former Speaker of the House of Representatives of Indiana, and Rupert Boneham, who's been on the show, he's a friend of the show, who was on Survivor, I think, and who's running as a libertarian. And the moderator was Dennis Ryerson.
Ryerson.
Former editor of the Star.
Of the
And
Indianapolis
we use the
Star.
term loosely.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, which term?
Editor of the
Yeah.
Star.
Okay, so the debate
Former.
the other night, from what I saw of it, and I didn't watch the whole thing, I thought it was...
Oh, I wanted to talk about the format, because that really
Go
takes me
for it.
off. Format of that was actually worse than the presidential, vice presidential, because you were allowed to give a 60-second opening statement. The questions came from the audience. Some were by email. You were allowed 60 seconds to respond, then a 30-second rebuttal. And then the closing statement, I believe, was 90 seconds. At one point, the rebuttal time was moved from 30 seconds to 20 seconds. My point is, people complain about candidates talking in sound bites, and then you make these ridiculously short response times to the questions.
that are only fit for sound bites.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and some of the audience questions were a little out there.
Well, they always are.
Well, yeah, but it's up to the moderator to, in this case, to pick out the best one,
Well, I
the
think
most
you had selected
revealing.
them in advance.
And Dennis Ryerson was really a terrible choice. And the question that bothered me the most, and I am big on mental health issues,
I didn't understand. Yeah.
but why that became a major question at the gubernatorial debate was their position on mental health issues. I
As it
have
relates to
no idea.
education.
Yeah, I have no
worker,
idea.
social worker from Carmel asked
Yeah.
the question,
Right.
and that didn't seem to make any sense. But going back to the format just for a minute, and then we can go to that specific thing. I thought, generally, in terms of these types of debates, they're not really debates when the candidates don't ask each other questions. In debate, whether it's collegiate or interscholastic,
Right.
you ask your opponent a question, and you have so much time for cross-examination, and your opponent has to answer, and you're scored on whether you answer the question.
And that's another part of the debate I want to bring up, is the part of the debate was a Lincoln-Douglas type exchange, according to Ryerson. And one candidate would make a 1-minute statement, the other two would have 2 minutes to respond, and then the person who started it could have another minute to follow up. And they went around and did the three that way.
And
that was supposed to get
And
conflict, but it didn't really.
Actually, Lincoln-Douglas style debate in high school and college involves cross-examination again. Lincoln and Douglas in the original Lincoln-Douglas debates didn't have cross-examination. They made statements largely about about states' rights and what they would do, if in the United States Senate, and they did not ask each other questions as such. But I think that a real debate, involves asking your opponent questions, because that moderator is asking general questions, and all they are is a basis for somebody to spin off talking points, and it's like somebody making an argument before the appellate court. An appellate court is asking questions of that lawyer, and if the lawyer is trying to spin or segue those questions into what the lawyer wants to do, the court's going to nail them usually, because the judges or justices know what they're asking. Members of the press who are on a panel like that, they're just kind of tossing up a question and listening for what the individual candidate answers and just kind of letting them run. Whereas if your opponent asks you a question, you can say, wait a second, you didn't answer my question. I asked you, are you going to do X, Y, or Z? And you said you're going to do 2, 3, or 4. Now, wait a second.
Rupert asked a question during the Lincoln-Douglas type segment. He asked a question, or he made a statement about how we need to have criminal justice reform, how people get the felony label, and how they're tagged for life, and we need to maybe look at not putting nonviolent people in prison facilities where they're violent people. He made a pretty good point. Pence came along, talked about that. He actually threw a bone and said, I think that I want Indiana to be the worst place for anyone to commit a felony, but we need to give people second chances in life. And then John Gregg got up and he talked about energy in response to Rupert's question.
And I noticed another thing during the debate where the moderator said, Speaker Gregg, and whatever the question was, and I think it was on the mental health education issue, he said, well, I know what that question was, but I want to go back to what you were saying a minute ago. Now, wait a second. No, you don't just kind of slough off what it is, even if it's a bad moderator, when they say, okay, answer this question. And I thought, though, in watching the debate, I hate these formats. I mean, you know what I've said about that. But I thought listening to it, both of the major party candidates did the same thing. I mean, I didn't notice that what Pence and Gregg were doing
Pence and Rupert were more focused on the questions.
I thought Rupert was more focused on the questions. I thought Gregg and Pence were both spinning off sound bites.
Well, they weren't doing sound bites.
Yeah, and
at least Pence's sound bites were relevant to the question.
Well, and Gregg wandered a couple of times, but then I'm reading in the press afterwards how Gregg had the win in the debate.
I didn't see that.
And I
don't notice a lot of people think that Gregg had the win in the debate.
Well, I thought it was interesting, though, that Rupert at a couple of points would, the moderator was going, okay, and now Speaker Gregg, and Rupert would go, excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, he kept forgetting about it.
Yeah, at least twice, because and he goes, oh, I'm sorry, and he goes, I'm used to it as a third-party candidate.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty arrogant. I mean, and maybe it wasn't arrogance on the moderator's part.
It probably was.
But if it wasn't, giving him the benefit of the doubt, I mean, that shows inherent in people's ways of thought. Oh, well, there's the Republican and the Democrat and other. I mean, that's just...
It's the way the Star has been run for years.
Well, no, because the Star, for years before that, there was just Republican and other. I mean, that was under the Pulliams, but that's neither here nor there. Polls. After the debates, the polls showed different fluctuations. What do you think? Do you think the debates are going to have any appreciable effect on anything?
Well, the first debate irreparably shattered Obama's attempt to portray Mitt as a frothing at the mouth extremist. People had never seen Mitt before. What was it? 67 million turned into the first debate. And they saw someone up there who had serious plans, who had a grasp of the issues. Now, you may not agree with him, but he had a grasp of the issues, both domestic and foreign policy, as an alternative to Obama. People don't like where the country is right now.
You're saying that as a general statement. I mean, I think
the country on the wrong track. Those polls indicate, it's more than 2-1. People think the country's on the wrong track.
No, but people also poll more heavily thinking that President Obama has the right idea of which direction to go, as opposed to multiple Mitt. Because Romney, look, I heard a comparison the other day of Romney was like the Black Knight in Monty Python. He's... Oh, no, that's not my position. This is. No, it's not. You're missing
that is a major stretch there.
Oh, no.
What people are looking for an alternative to Obama because it's not working.
I agree with Jeff. They were looking, the fact that Mitt Romney was not foaming at the mouth and that he sounded reasonable He's on the same stage as the president, and that moves him up, and the polls showed that. The polls showed a much bigger jump than even after the Republican National Convention.
Which really wasn't much of a bump after the Republican Convention.
There wasn't.
But I thought that the positions he took, there was no substance to it. And I thought that the worst thing that happened after, there at the end of the debate, President Obama has a chance to do his final statement. All he was doing was giving all these statistics that people had no context in which to place them. But the polls right now are showing different things. They're showing, for example, like in Massachusetts in the Senate race, the Democrat
It's jumping them back and forth.
Warren knows ahead by like 5 or 6 points now.
Well, there have been some showing.
There have been some showing it within the margin of error for between Brown and
I've seen some
Chief Liawaka.
showing Brown ahead.
Oh, come on, don't. That's just...
Well, now Elizabeth Warren's been accused of practicing in Massachusetts without a license, without a law license.
If she was in federal district court there, and she was practicing in U.S. court, she didn't have to be admitted in the Commonwealth.
It depends on the district.
It depends on the district.
I've read that before.
Going to different polls, what about the state of Indiana and the race between Murdoch and Donnelly?
I think it's neck and neck right now, and
It's within the margin of error.
I still
There's margin of error.
Lugar Republican's going to come enough to put Murdoch. I'm starting to pronounce his name right. Murdoch.
Yes.
It's a Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Just remember,
Murdoch in the lead, but it's going to be close. It's going to be close. I'm still not convinced that John Gregg can close the gap.
I don't see that at all. I mean, I don't like Pence's policy positions. He was in law school, at the end of law school. He graduated right as you were coming in.
Pence was either 1 or 2 years ahead of me.
And see, you were third year when I was a first year.
He was cartoonist when I was editor of the paper. So I'm not sure he wasn't just 1 year ahead of me. I think I was editor in my second year.
No, you're editor third year. You were editor when
I was president of Student Bar Association.
You had such lofty titles, I lost track.
Well, this has been a strange gubernatorial campaign because Gregg ran what would normally be a good campaign for Indiana.
Hi, I'm from this place, and I like ice cream.
I don't think his commercial's been a disaster.
But they've been the folksy commercials that normally win in Indiana. This time, it's been different.
You're really demeaning Hoosiers' intelligence, Jeff.
Well,
Yeah, I think it insults Hoosiers. That's the problem with the commercial.
Well, yeah, but Franco.
I don't think Frank O'Bannon did commercials that folksy.
But he's the old grandfather type, like Bob Orr, like Otis Bowen, and John Gregg has been running a campaign based on those lines, and it's normally successful. What has been the difference this time around?
I think because he's a Democrat running against Pence, who's got a fairly corporate image and comes across that way. And we're running out of time here. This is Jeff, as always, pleasure.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd go hoarse there at a certain point. Wasn't able to do it. You
just can't shut me up. No one can shut me up. And believe me, they've tried.
As always, Paul, it's a pleasure this week.
Good seeing you, Mark.
We'll be back next week. This is Civil Discourse Now. See you then. Being here today.